So our next speaker is Dr. Douglas Zook from Boston University, where he's a professor of science education and global ecology. He teaches the graduate symbiosis course that actually Lynn had passed on to him more than 20 years ago. He served as president of the International Symbiosis Society for 10 years and is now the vice president. Dr. Zook.
My name is Cindy Langdon, and I am a 7th grade teacher in Berwick, Maine, and I have been around microcosmos now for over 20 years. And the one thing that I want to say about Lynn Margulis and all of the other people at Boston University that supported me when I was making an exploration of new ideas is that what Lynn meant the most to me was watching a true teacher. And the moment that I remember the most happened at the first International Symbiosis Congress. She was at the front of the auditorium, down on the floor with a microscope. And in the light were some spirochetes. And I can remember they would travel across and hit the boundary between the light and dark and bounce and change direction. And Lynn was just very, very fascinated with them, watching them with other students. And what she was doing was sharing a true moment of teaching. And what I watched at that moment was somebody who was exploring and constructing knowledge. She was being a true teacher, and there was a symbiosis going on between her brain and the other brains that she was interacting with. And I appreciate the grace that she had to be so open with those moments and invite me to be able to be any part of that was just a true honor. Thank you very much, Lynn, and thank you, Doug.
I'm Dempsey. I'm a biology teacher at Acton-Boxborough High School, where I've been teaching for 15 years. And one of the reasons why I became a biology teacher is because of Lynn's inspiration when I was her student at UMass Amherst, where eventually I went to Boston University to work at the Microcosmos project, which she helped found. And I continue to use many of her activities, or many of the activities that Doug Zook and others teachers developed at Boston University until today. So thank you very much, Lynn.
Our good friend Pam Pelletier, who runs the science program at Boston Public Schools, also did some attempts at a videotape or a video presentation, and even though she didn't know Lynn personally, it sort of speaks a lot to what we're all about. She really couldn't finish the video on camera. It just was too emotionally powerful for her to do that. So these are some lines that she wanted to share. Lynn was a bright fire in the world of science, Pam says, and if you were lucky enough to get close, you could also feel the warmth of her humanity and her commitment to making teachers, students, everyone better understand our biosphere and how it came to be. She is a wonderful role model for young women and to all of us to see that we must question what we think we know and stand strong when grounded by research. She forever changed the way I see and share the world, professionally and personally. She is a science heroine, my heroine. Thank you, Lynn, for making me a better scientist and teacher. These three comments really represent the other scientific revolution here in our theme for this segment today. And that's the revolution that's with all of the teachers around America and around the world, really, some of whom are here today. We have some of our wonderful friends from Barcelona. We have other teachers from other schools here as well. And of course, as Emily represented so wonderfully and beautifully earlier, the theme of how Lynn as a teacher impacted so many people in the profession. I've been fortunate enough to carry the banner of, and also, frankly, the daunting task of carrying the symbiosis banner at Boston University when she left. Perhaps you can imagine what that's like. She's leaving a university. She's somewhat of a legendary figure, brilliant figure. And she said, Doug, you have to continue to do this, and you have to do this at least as good as what I've been doing it. And I said, oh, yeah, okay, well. And she also got Silber to say, this course can't be taught unless Zook is teaching it. So fortunately, I was able to stick around there for a number of years. Maybe that was one of the motivating factors that I did, right? And I was too afraid to leave. Margolis would say, Lynn would say, you know, what did you leave there for? I told you to teach the course there. Anyways, so that's been going forward. And at the same time, part of this revolution with teachers is that I've been involved with science education such that the symbiosis course actually was, if not required, certainly encouraged by me and others to be taken by those studying to be teachers in biology, earth science, chemistry. So literally hundreds of individuals went through the symbiosis course, got a lot of Lynn's message and a lot of her thoughts and ideas through this program and frankly through other teachers. I mentioned, just as a word of explanation in there, Cindy Langdon in Maine in the first presentation mentions Microcosmos. Microcosmos was a program that Lynn and I initiated, Lynn lending great credibility, ideas, strength in the late 80s. Originally we had an idea of a microbial museum, and a small group of us met in the early 80s on that, and it sort of morphed into this more essential curriculum development, using the microbial world as a way for teachers to bring across a whole myriad of subjects in the classroom, to transform curriculum, to be a part of a revolutionary development of how students of all ages see the world. And Microcosmos is a part of that for a number of years. And we developed a curriculum guide, and Lynn was intimately a part of that with over really 450 workshops in that period of time, some of them up to 90 hours. Excuse me. Lynn really didn't, being from Boston University, I managed to get some few photographs, a lot of these you've seen already last night and today, but I think this was from the BU archives. They were very gracious and wanted to help in any way. And I think that Lynn wouldn't have, I think a prerequisite sometimes for pictures taken from what I can see back in those days at BU in the 70s was that there had to be a microscope nearby, or else, no, you can't take my picture. So, and this one here was in Bostonian magazine recently, and one that we've seen quite a bit of, again with the microscope view. And Lynn actually sometimes would, this was taken before, we would actually have long conversations, but she would sometimes leave me long messages on my phone. Some of you, of course, are familiar with these stories for sure, right? She would leave me very long messages about a wide range of fascinating individuals, ideas, themes that I should be interested in. And I'd play the tape, and I'd have to go back and take notes, and it's like being back in class. I mean, it was... But it was cool because she gave me so much fodder for thought and so much inspiration just through those tapes. I sometimes would kid her. I says, "Oh yeah, you called me because you don't want to hear my responses, and you don't have the time to do that, so you left this 45-minute message that I have to peel through." She says, "Yeah, right. That's right. I don't have the time right now to get back and forth with you on it." So. And of course I would have to set aside my entire university agenda to deal with just her comments, but they were quite inspiring, to put it mildly, and really kept me going all these years in many different ways. This is now, of course, a somewhat legendary, striking image of Lynn. But for me, someone had mentioned already that a lot of the theme really here is connections. Lynn was the connection ultimate person in many ways. She was all about connecting ideas and people and thoughts and philosophies and in the most profound way, and had the courage to do that. And personally, when I think of great courageous thinkers, I do think of two people mainly who really meant and guided me and continue to do so. And one was, of course, Lynn. The other, and I think he would be just overwhelmed if he could have met Lynn and been involved with his thinking, was this person. This is Alex Humboldt, who hated to be called Alexander von Humboldt. Much like Lynn, he would be quite angry about being put in any kind of elitist category. And he was really one of the most talked about, versatile, and active scientists of the 19th century. We can go back into the New York Times editions and other editions around the world, really. Front page in 1840, 1847, 1867, hundreds and hundreds of front page articles about what he was thinking, usually revolutionary thoughts at the time. And he was someone who really influenced so many people, so many ideas. So I see Lynn and Alex Humboldt as kind of connected to me in many ways. Here's Alex here. Charles Darwin requested that his friend, the botanist Joseph Hooker, tell the great explorer and science thinker Alexander von Humboldt, or Alex, that the whole course of my life, Darwin said, was because of reading Humboldt's remarkable personal narrative. Darwin was said to have carried Humboldt's writings everywhere and referred to him as the greatest scientific traveler who ever lived. Indeed, one can say that Darwin's late-in-life expressions of the network of life, as he called it, reflected the foundation that Darwin had discovered in Humboldt, arguably our first global ecologist, and perhaps even with a very much Gaian tinge. In my mind, Lynn Margulis was very much a Humboldtian, and we see a resurrection of the Humboldtian way of thinking finally after being somewhat dormant for over 100 years. And to some degree, the Lovelockian Margulis thinking has been part of that resurrection. In my mind, this really is best expressed in a lot of just little comparisons that are somewhat simplistic perhaps, but still meaningful. Humboldt relentlessly and physically explored previously untouched areas of the globe, focusing particularly on tropical ecosystems, such as pictured here in Tipitini in eastern Ecuador, where Lynn has been, and I've led several trips there. Whereas Lynn mentally explored those bioregions where the mind had dared not travel. And this shown in this microtubule array that we've heard a lot about and today and many other times previously. Here is a view. Humboldt's perseverance and unparalleled resourcefulness led him to scale the highest mountain peaks known at the time, sometimes just leaving everybody in the lurch. They couldn't keep up with him. This is a painting of a mountain area in the Andes near Quito that he climbed. This is by the Humboldtian artist Church. Indeed, almost all the people, or many of the people that we revere from the 19th century as naturalists here in this room, Thoreau, to some degree Emerson, others, considered themselves Humboldtians. At the same time, Lynn conquered other kinds of mountains. As we know with this particular article and many others like it that was so pioneering, she conquered mountainous dogmatic science tradition and often obstructive male chauvinism in providing a new realization of the dominance and impact of symbiosis. Humboldt constantly ignored established protocol by pronouncing the deep attributes of indigenous peoples and the need for cultures and races everywhere to be respected, not denigrated. Indeed, he is still revered as a champion of indigenous peoples' dignity and rights in many countries who have been victimized by distant invaders and empire expanders. Meanwhile, Lynn rebelled against convention as well. and she paved the way for a new emerging respect for either forgotten or less recognized thinkers, such as Lamarck, Vernadsky, and the important Russian symbiologist pictured here, Kozo-Polyansky. One of Lynn's last book projects was the summary work by him and made available, and with Mary Rumfo's dynamic photosynthetic animal on the cover. Mary, great researcher in Maine, now in Connecticut, couldn't be here today due to a death in her family, but she has done great work on kleptoplasty and with this photosynthetic animal. And Humboldt invented or inspired entire new disciplines such as biogeography, climate science, global ecology that showed new mergers of life and non-life that are more relevant today than ever. These are actually, see all those little, if you're not familiar with this is Humboldt putting in the names of plants that he found at different altitudes of the particular mountain. And it was his way of trying to build unity of botany, geology, and other aspects of biology and atmospherics as well. Did a lot of this kind of sketching and expression, and back 210 years ago. Meanwhile, Lynn resurrected symbiogenesis with her diagrams and her revolutionary thinking, co-originated Gaian concepts, and poked holes in neo-Darwinian thinking that together have initiated new paradigms of how we see the Earth, living systems generally, and ourselves. Humboldt stressed that living systems cannot be understood without a geological context. Here shown on this, again, Heart of the Andes Humboldtian church image. He constantly saw the need to merge disciplines. She forged a similar synergy, always revealing the microbiogenic nature of much of the biosphere, from limestone to oxygen, as represented by these stromatolites. Humboldt put his mind in outer space, yet with his body physically, as in 5 years in the dense and demanding tropical rainforest, immersed in flora and fauna, the rocks and the water of the earth, and thus promoted the notion that accessing the whole, the cosmos, and that's the original Cosmos book, not the original copy of it, but Humboldt wrote the book Cosmos back in 1845, and this is a new version that's just come out, or a new edition that came out recently. He said that you couldn't access the whole, the cosmos, just through reductionist thinking and through armchair analysis. You had to be right out there. And in that case, in this case, we have the microcosmos there, with Margulis opened hidden dominant worlds and traveled in a kind of inner space, and profoundly exposed the dominance and impact of microbes extending back 4 billion years. These were connectors, complementary, powerful connectors. And that connection, again, is represented in the scientific revolution, where even though the box needs to be opened up and fit into textbooks, teachers everywhere are already breaking out of that box. The revolution in thinking that Lynn has posited, along with others, is happening in classrooms, much of the time not covered by media, or there's no way anybody would really know immediately. But students are learning about this, and they will more if many of us here, right, have something to do with it. Like Humboldt, Lynn was completely dedicated to bringing key science to everyday people, especially in Lynn's case to teachers. They both impacted tens of thousands of people directly and millions indirectly. Indeed, Lynn periodically in the 1990s took time to sneak away from Amherst here. And she came to BU, and I would meet her there, and we would do a number of workshops together and have many special times with teachers. And we found some old clips of that that were put together, and Joe Martinez here and others who were back with me in those days. And this is just, we have hours of old video clips of our workshops with teachers. This is with teachers from 12 different states in the United States.
A member of each team will come up here and get a spoonful of brown syrupy stuff and beige powder, one each, just one spoonful of each. and put them in the bottles provided by Zook. I would get rid of what's in the bottle to begin with. There's still some beer in the bottom. But what you want to do is get the hottest water. You got hot water, don't you?
We'll get some.
Yeah, well, I mean, doesn't your taps have hot water? Thank you. Yeah, so you've got to replace with hot water. So get the hottest water you can out of the tap, whatever you can.
Just leave it
1
running a while.
teaspoon of each, up to whatever you want to, up to about here. Shake it up and put the balloon on the cup. Put the balloon. Put the balloon on this, okay? That we'll let that in peace while we go back to the. Okay, that has to be started. Another member of each team, you can beg, borrow, or steal any plant. Doug's got lots of them. I need a plant for each table. So when we finish this first round, each table will have one of these experimental setups. The balloon, we call it, what is it? The balloon. I forget. No, it's got a name. I have to look at the teacher's guide. You're all going back to the classrooms. The teacher's guide. Yeah. Whatever it is, the balloon exercise. Anyway, so we have a balloon exercise and a plant on each table. Let's just go ahead and do that. Is there 1 teaspoon of each in the hottest water?
So this would go on for 2.5 hours of interaction with teachers and wonderful rapport building, new ideas. We have wonderful sequences on this that we'll also share with the Library of Congress eventually. And it became a way of just really fostering instruction in this field and inspiring so many people. We also very recently at the School of Education at Boston University developed a poster. It was really developed by Yelena Alexeyevna Popova, formerly from Ukraine, and myself. This is the first showing of it, and it's a large poster. It's a permanent display that will be in the School of Education library, along with all her books available for future students as a lasting contribution. And this will be in place in another month or so. And again, all of the times she emphasized, this was a whole series of interviews we did recently, or a couple of years ago actually, and she would come many times to Boston University School of Ed, when in this case we did a lengthy interview, which really hasn't been seen as yet. I'll try to get that out into the world soon, on a wide variety of topics. But I do feel that the symbiosis course, the things that I'm doing, for me, the inspiration is strong enough that I think we can continue forward with her messages, with her ideas, build upon it, much like she would want us to go in even new directions, and not be afraid to share new ideas as we go to this new worldview, and make sure that it's translated meaning from research to everyday language, and that students from grade school on up can begin to understand and deal with. So thank you very much for your time. Have a good rest of the sessions.